Welcome to this daily PBJ devotional. Read Deuteronomy 12 and Isaiah 40 today to keep up with the Old Testament reading schedule. This devotional is about Deuteronomy 12. These are the statutes and ordinances you must be careful to follow all the days you live in the land that the Lord, the God of your fathers, has given you to possess. Destroy completely all the places where the nations you are dispossessing have served their gods, atop the high mountains, on the hills, and under every green tree. Tear down their altars, smash their sacred pillars, burn up their Asherah poles, cut down the idols of their gods, and wipe out their names from every place. You shall not worship the Lord your God in this way. Instead, you must seek the place the Lord your God will choose from among all your tribes to establish as a dwelling for his name, and there you must go. To that place you are to bring your burnt offerings and sacrifices, your tithes and heave offerings, your vow offerings and freewill offerings, as well as the firstborn of your herds and flocks. There, in the presence of the Lord your God, you and your households shall eat and rejoice in all you do, because the Lord your God has blessed you. You are not to do as we are doing here today, where everyone does what seems right in his own eyes. For you have not yet come to the resting place and the inheritance that the Lord your God is giving you. When you cross the Jordan and live in the land that the Lord your God is giving you as an inheritance, and he gives you rest from all the enemies around you, and you dwell securely, then the Lord your God will choose a dwelling for his name, and there you are to bring everything I command you, your burnt offerings and sacrifices, your tithes and special gifts, and all the choice offerings you vow to the Lord. And you shall rejoice before the Lord your God, you, your sons and daughters, your menservants and maidservants, and the Levite within your gates, since he has no portion or inheritance among you. Be careful not to offer your burnt offerings in just any place you see. You must offer them only in the place the Lord will choose, in one of your tribal territories, and there you shall do all that I command you. But whenever you want, you may slaughter and eat meat within any of your gates, according to the blessing the Lord your God has given you. Both ceremonially clean and unclean may eat it, as they would a gazelle or deer. But you must not eat the blood. Pour it out on the ground like water. Within your gates you must not eat the tithe of your grain or new wine or oil, the firstborn of your herds or flocks, or any of the offerings that you have vowed to give, or your freewill offerings or special gifts. Instead, you must eat them in the presence of the Lord your God, at the place the Lord your God will choose. You, your sons and daughters, your menservants and maidservants, and the Levite within your gates. Rejoice before the Lord your God in all you do, and be careful not to neglect the Levites as long as you live in your land. When the Lord your God expands your territory as he has promised, and you crave meat and say, I want to eat meat, you may eat it whenever you want. If the place where the Lord your God chooses to put his name is too far from you, then you may slaughter any of the herd or flock he has given you, as I have commanded you, and you may eat it within your gates whenever you want. Indeed, you may eat it as you would eat a gazelle or deer. Both the ceremonially unclean and the clean may eat it. Only be sure not to eat the blood, because the blood is the life, and you must not eat the life with the meat. You must not eat the blood. Pour it on the ground like water. Do not eat it, so that it may go well with you and your children after you, because you will be doing what is right in the eyes of the Lord. But you are to take your holy things and your vow offerings and go to the place the Lord will choose. Present the meat and blood of your burnt offerings on the altar of the Lord your God. The blood of your other sacrifices must be poured out beside the altar of the Lord your God. But you may eat the meat. Be careful to obey all these things I command you, so that it may always go well with you and your children after you, because you will be doing what is good and right in the eyes of the Lord your God. When the Lord your God cuts off before you the nations you are entering to dispossess, and you drive them out and live in their land, be careful not to be ensnared by their ways after they have been destroyed before you. Do not inquire about their gods, asking, how do these nations serve their gods? I will do likewise. You must not worship the Lord your God in this way, because they practice for their gods every abomination which the Lord hates. They even burn their sons and daughters in the fire as sacrifices to their gods. See that you do everything I command you. Do not add to it or subtract from it. This is God's word. People have a tendency to borrow cultural items from different people around them. Other nations like American movies, and we like Chinese food and German cars, for example. Moses was concerned that God's people would start to assimilate religious elements from the false religions of the nations around them after they entered the land. This chapter reminds Israel to worship the way God commanded, without mixing their worship with the practices of false gods. You can see that in verses 4 through 8 and verses 29 through 31. But notice that in the middle of this chapter, Moses commanded the people to bring their offerings to the tabernacle. We see that in verse 11. And while worshiping the Lord there, they were to, and these are the words of the NIV from verse 12, they were to rejoice before the Lord your God, you, your sons and daughters, your male and female servants. Again, that's verse 12 in the NIV. This language reminds us that worshiping the Lord is not supposed to be something that is unpleasant. It isn't something we dutifully do because it is good for us, like eating vegetables instead of steak. Instead, God designed us for worship, and when we come alive to Him by His grace, we rejoice in the worship of the Lord. In our context as Christians, that would mean singing with joy, learning and receiving His word with joy, praying and giving thanks with joy, fellowshipping around the word with good friends in joy, as well as serving and giving to the Lord's work in joy. Certainly there are churches and ministries that try to manufacture joy by being more entertaining or trendy than churches like us. That's a danger we should watch out for. But we should also be careful not to equate genuine worship with an attitude that is so solemn and serious that joy never even enters the picture. Solemnity and seriousness are parts of worship. But so is joy, rejoicing, sanctified laughter, godly friendship, and feasting together. Most of the time, the difference between joyful worship and unpleasant worship comes down to the state of our hearts. When we are preoccupied with the problems and things of this life, we may not be very excited or joyful when we worship together or when we worship separately alone. Certainly, sin changes what is important to us and prevents us from wholeheartedly entering into the worship of the Lord. So, how have you felt about worship on Sundays lately? How are these devotionals going for you? Is your time of prayer something dry and difficult, or is it life-giving and hopeful? If your personal worship, or our coming together in worship as a church, is not something you rejoice in lately, why not? Are you asking God to change your heart so that you can rejoice in your worship of Him? Think about that today. Search your heart and talk to the Lord about it. And I'll see you next time. May God bless you. Hope you have a great day today.